I lived alone in a small apartment in Sapporo, Japan on the third floor, and the building had decent security. I also rarely saw anyone in the hallways. The front door had multiple locks, and I always double-checked them before going to bed. I had a routine: brush my teeth, turn off all the lights, and scroll on my phone until sleep took over. One night I woke up to a sound, a faint creaking noise, like the floorboards shifting under pressure. My apartment had always made its share of settling noises, but this was different. This was rhythmic, deliberate. I sat up, heart hammering, and strained my ears. The sound stopped. Maybe I imagined it. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't ignore the way my skin prickled. I grabbed my phone and checked the time, 3:12 a.m. I switched on my bedside lamp and scanned the room. Everything looked normal. My closet door was slightly ajar, but that wasn't unusual. I often forgot to close it all the way. Still, I felt uneasy. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up, walking over to my bedroom door. It was still closed. I opened it carefully, peering out into the dark hallway. Nothing. The front door was still shut, the deadbolt in place. I even checked the windows, locked. Everything was as it should be. I was being paranoid. I climbed back into bed, turned off the lamp, and forced myself to relax. The silence stretched on, and eventually, exhaustion won. My body sank into the mattress, and I drifted into sleep. Then I woke up again. I wasn't sure why at first. I lay there, listening. My room was still dark. The air felt different, though, thicker, almost suffocating. Then I realized my closet door was open. Not just open, it was wide open. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stay still. My breath came in shallow, controlled pulls as I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe a draft? Maybe I knocked it open when I checked earlier. But then I heard it, the softest inhale. Not mine. My skin went ice cold. Someone was in my room. I didn't move. I barely breathed. I was frozen in fear. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, scanning the space beyond the open closet door. A shadow, low to the ground, motionless, watching me. The realization nearly made me gag. Someone had been hiding in my closet. They had been there the whole time, and now they were just sitting there waiting. My mind screamed at me to run, to bolt for the door. But I couldn't. If I moved, they would move. I had no idea if they had a weapon. No idea what they wanted. My phone was on my nightstand, just a few inches away, but the thought of reaching for it, of making any sudden movement, was terrifying. Then, as if sensing my dilemma, the shadow shifted. A slow, deliberate movement. I saw the outline of a hand pressing to the floor as they began to rise. I had no choice. I lunged for my phone, grabbing it with trembling fingers and hitting the flashlight. The beam of light exploded into the darkness, illuminating the figure crouched at the foot of my bed. He was a wild look in his eyes and his clothes were filthy. His lips curled into a grin as if he had been waiting for me to acknowledge him. I screamed. I scrambled back, nearly falling off the bed, but he moved fast, too fast. I barely had time to register the way he lunged before I threw the phone at his face. A sickening crack, a grunt of pain. That was all the chance I needed. I bolted. Out of my room, down the hall. I fumbled with the locks, my fingers shaking too hard to work the deadbolt properly. Behind me, footsteps pounded, closer, closer. Finally, the door swung open, and I threw myself into the hallway, screaming at the top of my lungs. Lights flicked on in the neighboring apartments. Doors opened. The man stopped in the doorway, staring at me for a long, horrible moment before stepping back inside. Then, he simply closed the door. Police arrived within minutes. They found him in my bedroom, sitting calmly on the edge of my bed like he belonged there. The police took the intruder to the station, and he was charged for his crime. It turns out that the man who broke into my apartment was someone who escaped from a psychiatric hospital. The night that he broke in, I had forgotten to lock the door. The man must have entered the apartment when I went to bed and went into my closet. It was hard to go to sleep after that night for around a week. I still get nightmares about it to this day. Now I always check the closet, and I always lock my bedroom door at night. I used to work the night shift as a security guard for a corporate office building downtown. It was a quiet job, boring most nights. I was alone from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., patrolling 5 floors of mostly empty offices. Cameras were set up on every floor, and I had a small monitor room on the ground floor where I spent most of my time. The building was one of those older ones that had been renovated to look modern, but it still had creaky pipes and ancient elevator mechanics. I was used to the strange sounds like whirring vents, old hinges, and the occasional flickering light. I had worked there for nearly a year, and nothing unusual had ever happened. Until one night. It started like any other shift. I brought a thermos of coffee, microwaved some leftover pasta, and made my usual rounds, checking that all office doors were locked, lights turned off, and bathrooms empty. At around 1:30 a.m., I returned to the monitor room and sat back down to go through my checklist. That's when I noticed something strange on camera 3, which recorded the third-floor hallway. There was a man standing near the elevator. He was dressed in a gray suit, holding a clipboard, and just standing there. He wasn't moving, not checking anything, just staring straight ahead. No one should have been in the building at those hours except for myself. I tapped the monitor thinking it might be a glitch, but the image was clear. I switched to camera 4, which showed the opposite end of the hallway. Same thing, there he was, still standing there. I grabbed the walkie and called up to the third floor. No answer, obviously. So I did what I was trained to do. I grabbed my flashlight, clipped my radio to my belt, and went up to investigate. The elevator groaned as it brought me up. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty. No sign of the man. I walked the entire floor, shining my light into offices and checking behind desks. Nothing, not a soul. I thought that the monitor had a glitch or maybe a paused frame in the camera. I even laughed a little to myself, feeling ridiculous for being spooked by a monitor. I went back downstairs and checked the cameras. The man had disappeared. I rewound the feed. The man hadn't come or gone. For a moment he was there, and a few seconds later, he wasn't. Still, I tried to ignore it. I went back to my seat, put on some music, and tried to relax. About 40 minutes later, I checked the monitors again. There he was. Not on the third floor this time. He was on the 5th. Same man, same suit, still holding that clipboard. But now he was facing the camera. I froze. He was staring directly into it with a blank expression on his face. His skin was extremely pale, to the point where I wondered if he was even human. Still, no movement, no blinking, no expression. I reached for the radio and called building operations. Nobody picked up. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? A man in a suit is standing still on a camera? I knew how that would sound. So I decided to go up again. But this time, I took the stairs. I walked slowly, my flashlight scanning each landing. I reached the 5th floor and opened the stairwell door cautiously. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual hum of the vending machine at the end of the hall wasn't there. I stepped out. It was cold. Colder than it should have been. The air felt sterile, like the floor hadn't been touched in months. I walked toward where the man had been standing, near the conference room. He wasn't there, but something was. Lying on the floor was the clipboard. It looked new and clean, like someone had just set it down. I picked it up slowly. There was a single piece of paper on it. A list of names, about 30 of them, typed in neat columns in a computer code-looking font. My eyes scanned down until they stopped at the last name. It was mine. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach tightening into knots. Just that one list. I suddenly had the horrible feeling that I was being watched. I turned around. Nobody was there. I rushed back to the stairs, heart pounding, practically leaping down each step. When I got back to the monitor room, I locked the door behind me and checked the cameras again. The 5th floor was empty. Then I checked camera 1, the lobby. He was in the lobby, standing just outside the door to the monitor room. I grabbed the emergency phone and called 911. My hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped it. I told the dispatcher someone had broken in and was trying to hurt me. I don't even know if that was true, but I was scared out of my mind. I looked back at the monitor. He was gone. The lobby was empty. No footsteps, no doors opening, nothing. When the police arrived, they searched the entire building. Top to bottom, they found nothing. No sign of forced entry. No man in a suit. Not even the clipboard. It had vanished too. I showed them the security camera footage, but any video evidence of the man in the suit had been erased. I could only rewind the camera by a few seconds or by an hour or more. It was like whoever or whatever was out there had managed to delete the footage. The police officers suggested I take a break. They thought that maybe it was stress, maybe a hallucination from working too many nights alone. But I know what I saw. I know what I held in my hands, and I know my name was on that list. I quit the next day. I haven't worked a night shift since. I still think about what happened that night. Was it all a hallucination, or was there something else going on? Why was my name on that list? I was on a road trip. My best friend James had just broken up with his girlfriend and was in one of those let's escape the city moods. He talked me into taking a weekend off work to drive out to the woods. We rented a small cabin in northern Michigan, tucked deep inside a forest where even GPS gave up. It had no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just a wood-burning stove, a lake, and silence. The place was beautiful, I'll give it that. Golden leaves, crisp air, and the smell of pine everywhere. We spent the first night drinking beers, cooking steaks over the fire pit, and laughing like nothing could ever go wrong. I remember thinking how peaceful everything felt, like we were totally alone in the world. We weren't. First sign that something was off came the next morning. I went out early to gather wood. That's when I saw footprints, fresh ones, leading behind the cabin and disappearing into the woods. They weren't ours. James had been snoring when I left, and I hadn't seen a single soul on the drive up. The footprints were large, maybe a size 12 or 13, and oddly deep. Whoever made them had been heavy or carrying something. I told James, but he laughed it off. Probably just some hunter passing through, he said. We're in the middle of nowhere. Chill. I tried to forget about it. Maybe he was right. But that night, as we sat on the porch drinking, I saw something that froze me. A man, standing between the trees, just far enough that I couldn't see his face. He was wearing an orange baseball cap and a camouflage jacket, just watching us. I nudged James, but by the time he looked, the man was gone. He thought I was messing with him. I wasn't. After that, neither of us could relax. We decided to go inside, lock the door, and turn in early. I pushed the couch in front of the front door just in case. Laugh all you want, but something about that man, he didn't feel right. He didn't look curious. He looked patient. I barely slept that night. Every crack of a branch outside felt like a warning. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching over the leaves outside the cabin. I lay frozen, barely breathing, listening. Then came the knock. 3 knocks, hard, on the front door. James whispered, "What the hell?" from the other room. We didn't move, didn't speak. Just sat in the dark, waiting. No more knocks came, just silence. After maybe 30 minutes, I heard the footsteps again, this time circling the cabin. Then, nothing. We stayed up until sunrise. When we opened the door, we found deep boot prints again. They led around the cabin and disappeared into the woods. James was pale. He didn't laugh it off this time. We debated leaving, but part of us didn't want to seem scared. I regret that now. We stayed. One more night. That day, we didn't leave the cabin. We didn't go to the lake. We just stayed inside, windows shut, doors locked. We even kept a fire poker and a hatchet close, just in case. And that night, it got worse. At midnight, we heard footsteps again. This time, 2 sets. Then the sound of someone trying the door handle. Gently at first, then with force. It rattled hard against the couch I'd pushed up against it. I shouted, "We're armed! Leave us alone!" Silence. Then, laughter. I can't describe how wrong it sounded. Like someone laughing, but with no humor. Just mockery. Then came a loud bang on the back door. Then another on the side. We were surrounded. James grabbed the hatchet and pointed toward the back. "We make a break for the car," he whispered. It was a horrible plan, but staying inside felt worse. We counted to 3, flung the back door open, and ran. The cold air cut into my lungs as we bolted through the trees. We didn't make it far. A figure burst out from behind a tree, orange cap, camouflage jacket, swinging a crowbar. I barely dodged. James tackled him. They fought on the ground, grunting, punching. I grabbed the hatchet and swung blindly. The man screamed. Blood splashed my arm. He ran, limping, disappearing into the dark. James was bleeding from the shoulder but alive. We didn't go back for anything, just ran straight to the car, tore off down the dirt road, and didn't stop until we reached a gas station an hour away. The police didn't find them. Not the man in the orange cap. Not his friend. Nothing. Just boot prints and a crowbar. They said it was probably people under the influence of drugs. Maybe. Or maybe they were just people who liked to hunt something different. We never went back to that forest, and I never feel safe in the woods anymore. I remember that night, and I remember one thing clearly, how calm they were, how confident, like they'd done this before. And maybe, just maybe, they're still out there waiting for the next cabin.